The sun was beginning its slow descent, painting the sky in streaks of gold and orange. Families sprawled across the park, laughter mingling with the sound of children running through the grass, dogs barking and the occasional hiss of a soda can being opened. The picnic tables were crowded with dishes, paper plates, and colorful cups. Daniel sat at the far edge of the group, his fingers drumming on the wooden table, as he stared blankly at a half-empty cup of iced tea. On the surface he looked calm, even relaxed, but inside a storm was brewing. Weeks ago, everything had fallen apart. Daniel had trusted Michael, his business partner, implicitly. They had built the company together, invested late nights, sleepless weekends, and almost every penny they had into making it succeed. Daniel had believed in loyalty, in honesty, in the idea that two people could work together and build something lasting. But Michael had shattered that belief. He had been siphoning money, falsifying records, and hiding transactions so carefully that even the auditors hadn't noticed. By the time Daniel realized the truth, the company was on the brink, and Michael had vanished with a significant portion of their savings. Daniel had replayed the betrayal over and over in his mind. Every handshake, every smile, every "we're in this together" remark now felt like a lie. He couldn't get the image out of his head. The casual way Michael had leaned back in his chair during their last meeting, pretending innocence, smiling as if nothing had happened. It wasn't just the money. It was the trust, the pride, the countless hours that had been stolen. And worse, there was no legal recourse. The numbers were messy, the trail faint. Michael had covered his tracks perfectly. Daniel had been left with nothing but a gnawing sense of injustice. At the picnic, the noise of laughter and chatter pressed against him, almost mocking him. He had come because he couldn't isolate himself forever. But he felt like an outsider in his own life. Families talked, kids shouted, and the air smelled of barbecue, fried chicken, and autumn leaves. Everything should have felt normal, light, even comforting. But Daniel couldn't shake the weight pressing down on him. Every joyful sound felt distant, almost like it belonged to another world. His sister, Claire, was at the center of the group, animatedly serving plates and chatting with cousins and friends. She was always the anchor in the family, the one who could make everyone laugh, who remembered everyone's favorite food, who noticed when someone was struggling even when they pretended they weren't. Daniel admired her, though he rarely admitted it aloud. She had a way of seeing the good in people, of trusting even when others had given her reasons not to. And Daniel, now jaded and wary, felt both drawn to her light and painfully aware of how much he had lost. Claire raised her glass suddenly, her smile wide, and the noise of the picnic quieted for a moment. All eyes turned to her as she spoke, her voice carrying clearly over the murmurs and laughter. "To the one who always shows up," she said, her tone playful but sincere. The words hit Daniel like a jolt. He froze, his cup halfway to his lips. Everyone was smiling, clapping and nodding, but he barely noticed. It was him. He always showed up birthdays, holidays, family crises, but the recognition had never felt like this. For a moment, he allowed himself to feel a small flicker of warmth, a reminder that not everything in his life was ruined. But that flicker was fragile, overshadowed immediately by the rage still simmering beneath his skin. The betrayal by Michael had left him hollow in ways no toast could fill. Daniel felt the old questions rise again. Why did this happen to me? How could someone I trusted so completely turn on me? Could I ever forgive? Or was revenge the only way to reclaim my dignity? He thought about the empty office, the audits, the missing funds. The way Michael had manipulated him, smiled in his face, and made him believe everything was fine. Daniel's chest tightened, a mix of anger, frustration, and hurt twisting inside him. He had trusted a friend, a partner, someone he considered, almost a brother. And now that trust had been weaponized against him. He had lost time, money, and a sense of security, and he couldn't even confront the person responsible without concrete evidence. As he sat there, Daniel's mind began racing. Every scenario, every plan, every possibility for confrontation or payback flickered through his thoughts like lightning. He imagined standing over Michael in his office, evidence in hand, the smugness wiped from his face. He imagined watching him squirm, seeing him realize for the first time that his actions had consequences. And then he imagined the risk getting caught, escalating the situation, potentially ruining his own life further. Each thought brought a mixture of exhilaration and dread. The picnic continued around him, but Daniel felt detached, almost like he was watching from behind glass. Children ran past, squealing with delight. Families shared meals, and yet he felt separated, a prisoner of his own thoughts. He was angry, yes, but he was also scared. Angry people could do reckless things, and Daniel wasn't sure what he was capable of any more. He had spent nights pacing, planning, calculating, and obsessing over every detail of the betrayal. The need for revenge pulsed in his veins, but so did a fear of losing himself in the process. Claire's toast repeated in his mind, to the one who always shows up. Her words reminded him that he was still capable of good, of loyalty, of integrity. He could let the betrayal define him, or he could channel his energy into something constructive. But the temptation to strike back, to reclaim what was stolen, was almost overwhelming. The story of his life felt suspended in that moment, teetering between patience and action, between forgiveness and vengeance. The sun dipped lower, shadows stretching long across the park. Daniel's thoughts were a storm, swirling around anger and the faintest glimmer of hope. He knew the road ahead would be hard. Michael had underestimated him, and Daniel now understood that trust and betrayal were fragile and powerful in equal measure. He could not undo what had been done, but he could control how he responded. And in that fleeting moment, between the laughter of children and the clinking of glasses, he made a silent vow to himself. He would find a way to reclaim his life, to face the man who had wronged him, and to show up not for revenge but for himself. Days turned into nights, and Daniel's life became a whirlwind of thoughts, plans, and restless pacing. He couldn't escape the betrayal, and every waking moment reminded him of the hole Michael had left in his life. Work had become unbearable. Returning to the office only amplified the emptiness. Files that once represented growth now felt like traps. Numbers that once made sense now twisted into evidence of deceit. He had tried talking to colleagues, friends, even family, but no one could fully understand the magnitude of what he'd lost. Michael had vanished like smoke, leaving only Daniel's anger in its place. At home, Daniel isolated himself. His apartment became a map of obsession, sticky notes with numbers, calendars with deadlines, screenshots of financial statements spread across the desk. Every detail mattered. Every email, every ledger entry was a potential clue. He examined every interaction with Michael in the past months, trying to pinpoint a moment where the trust had cracked. He remembered the early meetings, the way Michael had nodded and smiled, and how easily Daniel had believed him. That memory now burned like acid in his mind. How had he been so blind? Sleep offered no escape. Daniel lay awake at night, staring at the ceiling, imagining Michael's face over and over. He pictured confronting him in the office, in a courtroom, even on the street. He imagined the shock, the fear, The realization that Daniel was not a man to be underestimated. Every scenario felt vivid, almost cinematic. Yet the more he imagined it, the more he questioned himself. Could he actually go through with it? Would the satisfaction of seeing Michael falter outweigh the cost to his own soul? He wrestled with the question constantly, knowing that the answer would define him. At the same time, Daniel felt a pull in another direction. Claire's voice, from the picnic, echoed in his mind. To the one who always shows up. Her faith in him, her belief that he was dependable, grounded, and honorable, haunted him. He realized that revenge could consume him entirely, that it could turn him into the very thing he despised. Someone motivated only by anger, not principle. That small voice of reason, his sister's voice, became both a lifeline and a torment. It reminded him that he had a choice. He didn't have to be Michael's shadow. He could reclaim his life without destroying himself. Even so, the pull of revenge was intoxicating. Daniel began testing small scenarios, almost like exercises in his mind. He imagined sending anonymous tips, leaking information, confronting Michael at networking events, ruining his reputation subtly. Each idea sparked adrenaline, a rush of power and control that he had not felt since discovering the betrayal. He jotted these ideas in a notebook, sometimes revising them at 3 a.m., pacing in the dim glow of his desk lamp. Each plan felt more daring than the last. Each plan felt like it could be the moment where he finally regained control. The psychological tension gnawed at him. Daniel noticed how the anger started to change his behavior. He snapped at coworkers, became more guarded with friends, even avoided social interactions he once enjoyed. The world felt sharper, colder. People who smiled at him now seemed naive, ignorant of the harsh reality he had endured. He realized that revenge, even imagined, was shaping him, sharpening him, but also isolating him. Every decision he made seemed to carry weight, and he began to wonder if acting on the anger would make him free, or trap him forever in the same bitterness. In the midst of this struggle, Daniel began to explore Michael's world, observing his habits from afar. Social media, business meetings, public appearances. He watched Michael like a hawk, piecing together patterns, vulnerabilities, and potential weak points. The thrill of gathering intelligence brought a strange satisfaction, a sense of strategy, like a player moving pieces on a chessboard. Daniel had become methodical, precise, and patient. He knew that a single mistake could ruin everything. And yet, the temptation to strike impulsively lingered, whispering in the quiet hours of the night. Daniel's mind also wrestled with morality. He pictured Michael's perspective. Surely Michael had a justification for what he had done. Perhaps he had felt underappreciated, pressured, or desperate. Perhaps in his mind, Daniel had been careless or too trusting. Imagining the betrayal from Michael's point of view didn't calm Daniel's anger. It intensified it. He hated that someone could feel justified while leaving destruction in their wake. The thought made his desire for revenge sharper, almost unbearable. But it also reminded him that people were complicated, and that perhaps the battle he faced was not just external but internal, choosing between becoming like Michael or maintaining his own humanity. Amid the planning, Daniel clung to moments of distraction, though they were fleeting. A call from Claire, a family dinner, or a quiet walk in the park reminded him that life existed beyond anger. But the relief never lasted long. Each smile from a friend, each casual encounter became a reminder of what had been stolen. Every act of normalcy felt like a fragile mask over the storm inside him. And yet, he noticed a subtle truth. The more he considered mercy, the more he felt a strange empowerment. He realized that choosing not to act, to step back and rebuild, required courage equal to the courage needed for confrontation. The obsession with revenge became a balancing act. Daniel plotted, observed, and imagined, but he also measured the cost. Every potential act of vengeance had consequences, not just legally, but emotionally. He imagined losing family support, friendships, and his own moral integrity. The prospect was terrifying, but he couldn't ignore the pull of retribution. Every day felt like walking a tightrope between action and restraint, and the tension built until it became a constant presence, humming in his chest. Late at night, Daniel sometimes sat on the fire escape of his apartment building, staring at the city lights. He imagined walking into Michael's office, handing over the damning evidence, and watching the man's empire crumble. The idea thrilled him, made his pulse quicken. But then he imagined walking away, leaving Michael to live without interference, focusing instead on rebuilding his own life. That thought brought a different kind of satisfaction. A steady, deep sense of control that was not tainted by malice. He realized that revenge might offer a fleeting rush, but freedom offered lasting peace. By the end of these sleepless nights, Daniel knew that the choice ahead would define him. He had to decide whether to act on his anger or to reclaim his life. In another way, every scenario he played out in his mind reinforced one truth. The moment of decision would not only affect Michael, but also Daniel himself. He understood that revenge could satisfy the ego, but it could also poison the soul. And in the quiet hours, when the city below slumbered, he wondered if he had the strength to resist, to choose a path that would preserve who he truly was. The struggle consumed him, yet it sharpened him. Daniel became more aware of human nature, of betrayal, of trust, and of the consequences of actions. He realized that patience was a weapon as powerful as any act of retaliation. And somewhere, deep down, he held on to a sliver of hope that he could navigate the storm, face Michael, and still come out whole. For now, he waited, planning and observing, wrestling with his own morality, and understanding that the battle for revenge was as much internal as it was external. In that tension, the story of Daniel unfolded as a man torn between wrath and wisdom, between punishment and peace, between the intoxicating allure of revenge and the quiet strength of self-restraint. Every heartbeat was a countdown, every thought a preparation for the inevitable confrontation. And though he hadn't yet made the choice, Daniel knew the climax of this struggle was approaching, looming like a shadow over every action, every thought, every step he took toward the man who had betrayed him. The morning air was sharp and cold as Daniel stepped out of his apartment, the city streets buzzing with the rhythm of ordinary life. He walked with purpose, every step echoing in his mind like a drumbeat leading him toward a confrontation he had imagined countless times. The envelope in his pocket felt heavy, not just with evidence but with the weight of every sleepless night he had endured. Inside were financial records, emails, and documents meticulously gathered proof of Michael's betrayal. Daniel had rehearsed the moment so many times it played like a movie in his mind. Walk in, slam the files on the desk, watch Michael's face change from smugness to shock, and feel the satisfaction of justice served. But as he neared the office building, a knot of uncertainty twisted in his stomach. His mind raced. Could he do it? Would the act of revenge bring relief? Or would it consume him entirely? Each possibility flashed in his thoughts. Michael humiliated, clients leaving, news spreading, the rush of triumph. And then, darker shadows followed: legal consequences, escalated conflicts, ruined relationships, and a permanent mark on Daniel's conscience. The thrill of revenge collided with the fear of losing himself in the process. He stopped at the curb for a moment, taking a deep breath, staring at the glass doors of the office that held both his enemy and his potential vindication. Daniel's memories pulled him back to the picnic, to Claire's voice ringing in his ears, to the one who always shows up, the warmth of her faith, the trust she had in him, contrasted sharply with the cold weight of his anger. He thought about the moments that mattered, family gatherings, birthdays, where he had been present, loyal and dependable. And he realized that the act he was about to commit, no matter how justified, could overshadow all of that. Would he still be the person his sister admired, or would he become a mirror of Michael, defined by betrayal and bitterness? He stepped into the lobby, the hum of elevators and the chatter of employees pressing against him. He felt like an intruder, though technically he had every right to be here. His pulse quickened as he took the elevator up, rehearsing the confrontation in his mind again. He imagined Michael's office, the sleek desk, the scattered papers, the smug expression frozen on a face that had caused him so much pain. Every instinct screamed at him to act, to assert control, to reclaim what was taken. As the elevator doors opened, Daniel paused, hand hovering over the envelope in his pocket. He could almost hear the imagined gasp of Michael, the sudden tension, the power shift. But then, a new thought struck him, a clarity born from the weeks of obsession. Revenge was tempting, intoxicating, but it was not necessary for him to reclaim his life. He could take another path, one that required restraint, wisdom, and courage. Walking away would not be weakness. It would be strength. It would show that he was bigger than the betrayal, that he could preserve his integrity. Michael's office came into view. The man sat at his desk, unaware, typing on his computer, completely absorbed in his own world. Daniel felt the familiar rush of anger, a fire that had driven him for weeks. He clenched his jaw, imagining the power of slamming the envelope onto the desk. But in that instant, he saw something else, the consequences, the emails, the exposure, the potential chaos. It would solve one problem but create many more, including a version of Daniel he didn't recognize. He realized that this choice, this one moment, would define not just how Michael suffered, but who Daniel became. He took a step back, feeling the shift inside him. The anger was still there, sharp and real, but it no longer demanded action. Instead, it became a reminder of his resilience, of the lessons he had learned about trust, betrayal, and morality. Daniel's grip on the envelope loosened. He realized that Michael's downfall, if it came at the cost of his own peace, would not be a victory. True victory lay in reclaiming his life, focusing on what he could control, and showing up for the people who mattered. Daniel turned away from the office, the weight of the envelope lightening with each step. Outside, the city continued its steady, oblivious to the storm of emotion and decision that had just occurred in a glass building above. He walked without haste, feeling an unusual calm settle over him. The weeks of plotting, obsessing, and strategizing had brought clarity. Revenge had been a temptation, but it was not the only way forward. Daniel understood now that his life was not defined by Michael's betrayal, but by his own choices, by how he decided to respond. By the evening, Daniel returned to the park, the same one where the family picnic had taken place. Families laughed, children ran, and the scent of food lingered in the air. Claire approached him, her smile bright, her eyes curious. "Did you enjoy your day?" she asked, playful yet genuine. Daniel smiled, the tension in his chest easing. For the first time in weeks, he realized that showing up reliably, loyally, and with integrity was more powerful than any act of revenge. It was a victory he could carry without regret, a way to reclaim himself fully. He shared a quiet moment with Claire, her presence grounding him. The anger he had carried for so long no longer ruled him. The betrayal remained a memory, a lesson, etched into his mind, but it no longer dictated his actions. He had faced the ultimate test of his character, and emerged with his humanity intact. Daniel understood that revenge, while tempting, could never replace the peace he had chosen. The world did not need to see Michael falter. It only needed Daniel to rise above the pain and continue living on his terms. As the sun dipped behind the horizon, painting the sky in familiar shades of gold and orange, Daniel felt a sense of closure he had not anticipated. He had wrestled with anger, obsession, and temptation, and he had made a choice that preserved both his integrity and his future. The envelope, a symbol of potential destruction, remained unopened, a testament to restraint and wisdom. For Daniel, the victory was internal, profound, and lasting. He left the park with a lighter step, the memories of betrayal now tempered by understanding. He knew that life would continue to present challenges, that people would sometimes disappoint, and that the temptation of revenge would arise again. But now, he had experienced the true power of choice. He had faced the moment where he could become someone else entirely or remain himself. And by choosing the latter, he discovered a deeper strength than any act of vengeance could provide. Daniel returned home, the city lights flickering around him, and felt a rare sense of peace. He had survived the storm of betrayal, not by striking back, but by reclaiming control over his own mind, emotions, and decisions. In that moment, he understood that revenge might satisfy the ego temporarily, but it could never heal a soul. True strength came from rising above the wrongs inflicted, from protecting integrity, and from showing up for life, even when it was difficult. Later he would recall the picnic, Claire's toast, and the overwhelming temptation of revenge. And he would smile, knowing that the man who always shows up is not defined by retaliation, but by resilience, patience, and the courage to choose a better path. The story of betrayal had ended not with ruin or chaos, but with growth, wisdom, and an inner triumph far greater than any fleeting victory revenge could offer.